They gave me 3 days to assess the Aldrin mill before the demolition crew came in. 3 days to walk every floor, read every wall, tap every beam. 4. And nobody said a word about it. Nobody was paying close enough attention. The mill had been closed since 987. 4 stories of load-bearing brick, heart pine joists, and a roof that had held on through 37 winters because the men who built it in 1891 had known exactly what they were doing. Renata Cole's company had bought it for 11 cents on the dollar in a county tax auction and planned to gut to the studs and sell it as luxury loft conversions by spring. The bones of the place were her raw material. She had no interest in what those bones were saying. I heard it on the second afternoon. The north wall of the 3rd floor, the old weaving room, had a section roughly 14 feet wide, just east of the original freight elevator shaft, where the brick had been repointed, sometime in the 1960s, with a Portland cement mortar that was harder than the brick itself. An old brick and new mortar fight each other for 40 years. The brick loses. Tapped along the wall with a mallet, and listened to the sound change. Hollow in 3 spots. Pulled out my penlight, and looked at the sill plate where that wall met the floor joists. Soft, not soft like old wood, soft like rot that had been working its way through since before my daughter was born. I crouched down and pressed my thumb into the wood, and it went in half an inch without any effort at all. I marked the section with blue painter's tape, a long stripe at shoulder height, and wrote it up in my report that night at the kitchen table while he slept. I used plain language. The north-bearing wall, 3rd floor eastern bay, deteriorated sill plate and compromised mortar bond, suggest load transfer failure under construction stress. Recommend full structural investigation before any demolition or alteration work in this zone. I sent it to Renata Cole's project coordinator at 7:15 in the morning. The site walk was scheduled for 10. Renata Cole arrived in a white SUV with her site manager Boyd and 2 men from the development group I hadn't met before. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, and she moved through the ground floor quickly, the way people do, when they've already decided what they're going to build and they just need the box checked. Boyd was a big man with a yellow hard hat and an expression that said he'd heard everything before. I walked them through my findings, floor by floor. The roof was sound. The 1st and 2nd floors were solid. When we reached the 3rd floor weaving room, and I showed them the blue tape on the north wall, Boyd looked at it the way a man looks at a parking ticket, irritated, not concerned. That wall has been standing for 130 years, he said. It has, I said. And it's telling you it's done. Renata Cole was looking at her phone. She glanced up. What does that mean exactly? It means the sill plate is rotted through in that section, and the mortar bond is gone. When your demo crew starts cutting the floor above for the loft openings, you're going to put lateral stress on that wall that it can't handle anymore. That section fails, you lose the north corner of the building. She looked at the tape. She looked at her phone. She looked at Boyd. Boyd said, "We've had 2 structural engineers through here. Neither one flagged it." "Then they didn't tap the wall," I said. There was a silence. One of the men from the development group cleared his throat. Renata Cole put her phone in her pocket and looked at me with the kind of patience that isn't really patience at all. "Mr. Greer," she said, "appreciate the thoroughness." "I do, but we're on a timeline. We have financing in place, and I have 2 licensed structural engineers who have signed off on this building. What I'm hearing from you sounds a lot like, I don't know, an abundance of caution." "It's not caution," I said. "It's the wall." Boyd made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. She thanked me for my time. Project coordinator sent me a termination notice and a check for the remaining balance of my assessment contract by 2 o'clock that afternoon. Boyd, I was told later, called my report, Old Man Superstition, in a meeting with the investors that same evening. I heard that secondhand from a county building department clerk who knew me. I didn't lose any sleep over it. I'd put it in writing. The wall knew what it knew. I went home and made dinner. Poppy was in 2nd grade that year, working on a project about rivers, and she needed help cutting out pictures of the Mississippi from an old National Geographic. We spread the pages across the kitchen table, and I handed her the safety scissors. And she cut with the same focused expression her mother used to get when she was concentrating on something. I watched her for a while and let the mill go. It was 11 days later when my phone rang at 7:20 in the morning. A county inspector I'd worked with for years. He didn't say much. Just told me the north wall of the third floor of the Aldrin Mill had failed overnight. Demo crew had gone in the previous morning to begin cutting the loft openings. By evening, a section roughly 16 feet wide in the eastern bay, 2 feet wider than I'd taped, had sheared off the sill plate and buckled outward. Nobody was in the building when it went, but the north corner of the third floor was gone, and with it the structural integrity of the floor above. The building was condemning full engineering review. I thanked him and hung up and stood in my kitchen for a moment. The coffee was still brewing. Through the window I could see Poppy's bicycle leaning against the fence in the early light, the one with the handlebar streamers her grandmother had given her. I poured my coffee and drank it. The Aldrin Mill project stopped the same day. The development group pulled their financing within 48 hours. Renata Cole's firm lost the contract to a competing developer who'd been waiting on the county's decision, and the building went into a preservation review that the County Historic Commission had been pushing for since the sale. I read about it in the local paper. I didn't call anyone. She came to my porch on a gray Thursday afternoon, 11 days after the wall fell. I was sanding a section of reclaimed oak flooring in the side yard when her white SUV pulled up. She got out alone. No Boyd, no project coordinators, no development group. Just her, in a coat I didn't recognize, looking like someone who had rehearsed something and decided at the last minute to put the script away. I kept sanding for a moment. Then I set the block down and looked at her. "I owe you an apology," she said. "The way I handled the site walk, for Boyd's, for what was said afterward, that wasn't right." I nodded. "I appreciate that." She looked at the flooring I was working on. Do you have capacity right now? For a project?" "Depends on the project," I said. She was quiet for a moment. "The Historic Commission has taken over the Aldrin Mill review. The county wants to restore it rather than convert it. They're looking for a preservation contractor to lead the structural rehabilitation. Someone who knows historic masonry, the old joinery methods, the right materials." She paused. "Your name came up more than once." "Whose name came up for the structural engineering?" I asked. She named a firm I respected. I picked up the sanding block again, turned it over in my hands. Poppy's bicycle was still leaning against the fence. In a little over an hour she'd be getting off the school bus, and she'd want a snack and help with her reading, and the afternoon would go the way afternoons went. Homework on the kitchen table. Dinner, particular quiet of a house with one parent and one child, who have learned to be enough for each other. "I'll do it," I said. "One condition." She waited. "We restore it, not convert it. The bones stay. The original floor plan on the weaving room level stays. The heart pine joists get sistered and reinforced, not replaced. Whatever goes into that building when we're done, it goes in around what's already there, not instead of." I looked at her. "The people who built that mill in 1891 knew what they were doing. I'd like to honor that." She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Agreed." I set the sanding block on the railing. "I'll have a preliminary scope to you by end of week." She thanked me. She walked back to her SUV. I watched her go, and then I went back to the oak flooring. And when Poppy's bus came around the corner, 20 minutes later, she dropped her backpack at the gate and came running across the yard and asked me what I was making. "Fixing something someone almost threw away," I told her. She looked at the wood, still rough in places, the grain starting to show through where I'd worked it. "It's pretty," she said. "It will be," I said. "It just needed someone to listen to it."